You may strategically place your wonderful lips upon my posterior and kiss it repeatedly.
Hello, welcome back to Ycft. It's our second Dark Shadows themed episode. Anyone who hasn't seen the first one, we cover the first 210, technically 211 episodes of the soap opera, which I call the sitcom a lot.
Got a lot of flack for it.
I got flack for it. I know it's a soap opera, but ultimately, who cares? We aren't talking about the soap opera today. We will be obviously mention bits of it.
Yes.
But we are talking about the Tim Burton directed feature film that came out in 2012, also called Dark Shadows, starring Johnny Depp as Barnabas Collins. The fact that Barnabas is the main character is also interesting in itself, considering the whole point of us watching those first 200 episodes is he is not a character in the show at that point.
No.
It shows the popularity of the character that they decided to make him the lead.
Yeah.
I saw this when it came out in the cinema, and I watched it several times since then. I did always enjoy it, but I do have a few issues.
Yes.
I believe you the same with that.
Yeah, basically, I did see when it came out. I didn't see it in cinema, but I think we got it on DVD whenever it first came out. And I really wanted to like it, and I also had issues with it, largely to do with the tone of the movie.
Yeah, the tone, for me, as I say, the tone is kind of all over the place. Like, there's elements of horror. It's also very funny. And I think, like, not necessarily direction, but focus. Like, the plot doesn't have a lot of focus in it and tries to... I knew at the time, even without watching any of the soap opera, that... Just make sure I got it in there. I knew even without watching it that they were trying to put as many things from it in as possible, and I think that we'll get into
we'll dissect it properly as we go. But this was my first time watching it in a long time. It's not a film I return to very often, and it'll be interesting to chat through some thoughts.
Well, first time watching it since starting to watch the show, so I think I actually got a lot more out of it. So I always assumed that Tim Burton was just a massive... reaching with these balloons out of the way. You'll get it. If you watch previous videos, you'll understand.
I get it.
Yeah, I always assumed that Tim Burton was a massive fan. That was something that he pushed for. He did watch it, so he was a fan of it.
He was aware of it.
He was aware of it, but it was actually
it was
Johnny. It was Johnny Depp who
pushing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a deal was made with Warner. Like Dan Curtis, the creator of the show, made a deal back in 2006 with Warner Brothers, and Johnny was attached then. Apparently, that he loved doing what he's doing. It was a dream role of his to play Barnabas Collins.
Yes.
So he'd been pushing for this film for a long time.
Yeah, 2006 was ironically also the same year that Dan Curtis, the original creator of the show, passed away. And in that same year, I think it was after Curtis had already passed, Warner Brothers finalised arrangements with the Dan Curtis estate to produce a motion picture. I don't know why I said it the very old-timey way, motion picture, to make a movie about the TV show, and Johnny Depp was attached from the get-go. It was his company that got the rights to it. So he was keen from the very beginning. Bit of a gap between 2006 and 2012, so for various reasons it just didn't quite get off the ground, but the interest was there.
It went through a lot of rewrites, didn't it? That's probably led to a lot of the focus issue. He took it to Tim Burton, convinced Tim Burton to come on board.
Yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer, who plays the role of Elizabeth Stoddard Collins, actually got in touch with Tim Burton. Obviously, they worked together on Batman Returns.
Yes. Yeah.
And she asked to be in it because she used to watch it when she was younger as well, and she loved it, which apparently she never does. She never asks for a role. So that already shows that everyone went into this with the best intentions.
Yes, for sure.
So a couple of key changes from the show. So who is it that plays Vicky in this one? What's the name of the actress?
Vicky/Maggie is played by Bella Heathcote.
Bella Heathcote, you stole what I was going to talk about. Yeah, they combined the characters of Maggie Evans and Victoria Winters together. Bella also plays the ghost of Josette.
Yes.
So Josette was Barnabas's lover back in the day.
Back in like 1790s, yes.
Yeah, this is the first time I clocked what that meant, because I didn't realise, because Skylar is Maggie Evans and takes the name Victoria Winters. It's like, didn't really understand back then. Now it's like, oh, okay, so they've merged these two together.
They've
done that with, like, Matthew, the groundskeeper, isn't really a character. Their groundskeeper is Willie. Who, obviously, in the show, becomes Barnabas's familiar. It's the same in this, and he's played by
Jackie Earle Haley.
See, in my mind, he's just Rorschach. Or knock off Robert Englund. I actually do not mind his Freddy Krueger portrayal.
No,
at all.
Same here. So that's a video for another day.
That is absolutely it. That'll get a lot of flack, that one. Other cast members is Johnny Lee Miller, who plays
Roger.
Chloe Grace Moretz, who plays Carolyn.
Yes.
Who plays David? the youngest.
Oh my golly, I don't know his name.
Well, I'll put it up.
Yeah.
Who is it that plays Angelique? I've
Oh,
completely forgotten her name. But she is
Angelique, Eva Green.
Eva Green. She is
Delicious Eva Green.
gleefully unhinged. So she plays a witch who was obsessed with Barnabas back in the 1700s.
Yeah.
But then they had a bit of a thing, and then Barnabas fell in love with Josette, and Angelique was not happy.
She was not happy about that.
Yeah. So she cast a spell on Josette to make her jump from Widow's Hill. It's a show where 3 widows have jumped to their deaths.
Yes.
Josette jumped to death. Barnabas tried to follow, to try and see. He literally jumps after her, but he doesn't die, and he then starts turning into a vampire.
What have you done?
I'll always remember that. What have you
Always
done?
remember it from the trailer.
It's like his things growing wide, growing blood coming from his eyes, and just at the top of the hill, just like laughing maniacally.
What have you done?
And then she turns the townsfolk against him, and he gets buried in his coffin for
Yeah.
a few hundred years.
Yeah.
This film shows Barnabas and his family coming over to build the town. I believe, as far as I've got to in the show anyway, that wasn't the case, that he was born at Collinsport.
Yeah, in the show again, like we've talked about in our original Dark Shadows video, how the writers are very kind of much making up the characters' backstories as they went. But as far as we know at this point in time, Barnabas was born in Collinsport, born and bred, whereas in the movie version he was actually born in Liverpool in England, and his family, like so many Europeans did back in the day, they came over to America to establish their wealth. So that's what the movie. It's another slight change in the movie.
Yeah, Angelique turns the town against him to bury him, whereas in the soap, it's his own family that locks him away
Yes.
in a private mausoleum.
Yeah.
Which I quite like. We do actually see the mausoleum later on at one point in the film, which
we do.
I really, really liked. So a couple of key changes right then, and what Angelique does, because she kind of stick around Collinsport and creates a rival fishing business to take on. Basically, wants to destroy everything to do with the Collins.
Yeah,
the Collins
takes the
family.
Collins out of business.
Her main plot, the whole fishing side of it, rival business, is Burke's plot from the show.
Yeah,
So it's kind of weirdly merged those two characters together.
Yeah.
I get what there's so many different characters throughout the show, even just where we're up to.
Yeah.
I admit, I'm not up to Angelique yet.
No, you're
I
not
only know
up to
about her
Angelique.
from you.
Yes, I've given you some spoilers over there.
Yeah, but even it's
Over
clear to me
time.
now what they've tried to trim down on, and
Yeah.
now I know who Hoffman is. I've seen like in 2 episodes
Oh, Julia.
at most, and she's played by Helena Bonham Carter in this, and I believe this was the last time she worked with Tim Burton before they broke up.
Probably.
I think it was only like the 6th or 7th time Johnny had worked with Tim.
It was, I don't know the exact number, but yeah, they'd worked together many, many times. Like,
Yeah.
obviously had a very established relationship at this point.
I can absolutely praise this show for is its production design.
Yeah.
The maritime theme of that, the outside of the house, like it looks similar. It's different to the house, but it's got a couple of key features. But the interior's amazing design. Even apparently they did try and find in Maine and even areas like Cornwall over here in the UK, because they filmed it at Pinewood. They were trying to find a fishing village,
Yeah.
but they just couldn't find one, so they just built one in Pinewood.
There you go.
They straight up built one,
There you go.
and it looks incredible. So I think this had like $180 million
Yeah.
budget. So big budget film.
Yeah. Also, his longtime costume designer comes back for this, Colleen Atwood.
Oh, the costumes.
And the costumes are just
Because this
gorgeous.
is set in 1972,
Yes.
a year after
The show
the
was
show
cancelled.
the show ended. Yeah, obviously it's not canonical; it doesn't follow on from it. But you said that there's a reason.
There
'Cause
was a specific reason.
since our last video, we have got this book.
So yes.
This is Maggie from the show's book, and she goes over the original show, the 90s one, the cancelled CW pilot,
Yeah.
and going into this film, because I think it was released
Yeah.
in conjunction with it.
Well, there's...
What was it she said about this film? The
Well,
setting?
so yeah, this is published by Catherine Lee Scott, who played Maggie/Josette in the original show, and she said the reason that the movie singled out 1972 was mainly just because they thought setting it in 1969 or 1970 was going to be still like too enshrined in like 60s idealisms, and anything post 1973 was going to be too far removed from the hippie movement. So they thought 1972 was just like that perfect little pocket in time where it was like you still have the after effects of the 60s and the hippie movement, but it's like starting to wind down a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, they honed in on 72. I adore this book. I have to say, it's like my most treasured possession at the minute.
Interestingly, a lot of the British crew had never heard of Dark Shadows, because I don't think it aired here until like the 90s, and that wasn't consecutively. We probably never had all episodes aired. So that would have been interesting for them. Got to give praise to Johnny Depp for this one. He plays it differently to Jonathan Frid.
Yeah.
But he's absolutely paying respect to it, doing his own thing with it. But considering it's a dreamer, he does some really good finger acting, and I like the man out of time element to it, because he accidentally gets unearthed when they're building McDonald's.
Yeah.
There's a gag with the McDonald's sign and something from one of his books. I like it's like just a massacre of all these workers.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a couple moments where you see like his hand grabbing throats, which is what we first saw of Barnabas in the show. I really, really enjoy that. And I like to see him walk through Consport and all the 70s isms, and he's just like against the windows with his fingers covered in blood. I really, really enjoy that element to it. I wish there was more moments of him going fully barbaric.
Yeah.
Because the moment where he's around the campfire with a bunch of hippies, and he's like, he's talking to them about like poetry and all sorts of stuff. And I'm sad I have to kill you all. And he just butchers them.
Please know that it is with sincere regret that I must now kill all of you.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted more of. He's clearly a reluctant vampire.
Barnabas always has been.
Yeah. But I think we just needed a little bit more of that.
I really like how Johnny encapsulates the kind of surliness of Jonathan Frid's Barnabas. Like, there's such a seriousness. Like, Johnny Depp, I don't think at any point in this movie cracks a smile at all. You know, it's all like very, very serious. And I really do love that. One of the biggest pros of this movie for me was seeing more of Maine. For one thing, like, that's not something we ever really get to see in the TV show. Like, we're confined to so many
We've not
studio
even seen
sets.
the cannery. We've only ever seen Roger's office of the cannery in the show.
Yeah, I could probably literally count on one hand the amount of times we've seen like an outside shot of a street or something like that. It's pretty much all in interiors. So I love that. I love that we get to see more of the house as well. We get to see more of Collinwood here, because again, in the TV show, they kind of talk it off to, certain wings are closed off. Whereas in the movie, we get to see pretty much all of the house.
They do say that some bits are closed off.
But we still see a lot more of the house. But I also love in the movie, we see Barnabas acclimatizing to the 70s setting, which is not something we ever see in the TV show. It's like, as soon as Barnabas wakes up, he's just instantly...
Acclimatized.
He's acclimatized, yeah. And it's like, we just have to assume that Willie has probably, filled him in on everything he needs to know, or maybe he just like automatically knows. But I like it in the movie how he kind of struggles with it a lot, and he's trying to figure out, everything, and he's shocked at the idea that you can have a female doctor now. And so I really like that, and I appreciate that from the movie. Those were like the biggest
There's one moment that Carolyn says to him, it was in the trailer, are you stoned or something? And he goes, they tried stoning me, my dear. It did not work.
It did not work.
Are you stoned or something?
They tried stoning me, my dear. It did not work.
I actually do quite like the comedy, and for the most part, the comedy lands for me throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
Christopher Lee has a nice little cameo in it.
I totally forgot Christopher Lee was in this movie.
Yeah.
Totally forgot.
The big driving part of it is he wants to restore the Collins family name, because they're believed to be cursed. The business isn't doing well. They don't have as much money as they used to. Barnabas says, like, kind of in the show, he was buried with his jewels. There's a secret passageway
in the house,
similar to the show as well.
Yeah.
That is full of jewels. I don't know if that one's full of jewels, but we have seen secret passages.
Yeah.
I like how he goes to open up like a couple of them, and Liz has already found a couple of them.
Yeah.
And that's one aspect I also really like, how he just straight up tells Elizabeth that he is a vampire.
He confides
not
in
wasting the time, and she, to be honest, is obviously a bit apprehensive, but trusts him enough.
She gets on board with him pretty quick.
And he does the house back up. The business gets all new equipment.
Yeah.
He hypnotizes all the fishermen.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that I really like. It kind of loses the focus afterwards. I do love Angelique in this. She's a great villain. She loves being a villain. And in her office, she's got portraits of her ancestors and just her through different eras. And
that's
that
great.
is so cool. Her and Johnny bounce off each other so well.
Literally.
Their sex scene was ridiculous. she didn't mind filming it, but she was terrified of heights. So she was terrified of like the wire work.
Yeah.
And that just worked incredibly well for me. Problems is, like, some of the characters are a bit paper thin. Like Roger, for example. You pointed out he never has a scene alone with his sister.
No.
Which, you know, is a staple of the show, is them two, like, always debating each other.
Oh, yeah.
Debating each other. And in this one, he's like, they took the worst aspects of Roger's character for this version of it. It's like, he steals. He's not a very good father. Like, literally, at one point, Barnabas confronts him. It's like, you can either remain in this house and be a good father, or you can have sufficient money and you never come back. And he just leaves.
And so he just takes he takes plan B. Yeah. I totally agree with you. And again, it's weird watching it this time with the show fresh in mind and having a knowledge of the show prior to when I first watched this in 2012, and I had nothing really to go on. I just knew that it just felt like the movie was trying to cram in a little bit too much, and then certain things were getting left behind in favour of others. Whereas now watching it, obviously knowing like how certain scenes and certain characters like are from the actual show and what they were trying to like interweave together, it's very obvious to me that this was made with so much love and care, and like they wanted to pay, you know, homage wherever possible to the show. But I ultimately do think it is to the film's detriment. By including so much, you ultimately have this film that, it doesn't really have like a set focus, because on the one hand, it's Barnabas coming back and trying to reestablish the Collins family, which he does, to be fair. And I actually like that in the beginning, how, you know, we see their cannery come back in action, and then that establishes like a rival company with Angelique. But then we also have Angelique, and then we've got scenes with Barnabas and Angelique, and it turns out she still wants him, and she's kind of forgiven him. She just wants him back. She just needs his love. But then we also have an establishing relationship with Barnabas and Vicky, which...
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
Completely gets sidelined. And then, there's like this tiny little subplot of Roger not being a good dad to David, but Roger is also not in the movie enough, like nowhere near enough for it to be like established. It's just sort of there. We've also got Carolyn, who's the rebellious teenager who's like going through some things, and she's got like her own little thing going on. So there's just all of these things were really important to the TV show. So I absolutely understand why Burton and Depp were like, we need to include these. But it's just, they're stretched out a little bit.
Is Maggie/Vicky the reincarnation of Josette?
Oh, of Josette, Josette's ghost.
Josette's ghost. And I know Josette had to be in it, but I think Josette should have been like a post-credit scene or something like that. Because we even, like, I don't think she serves a point in the movie at all.
No, she doesn't.
We also at some point have the ghost of David's mother, Laura, that turns up like at the 11th hour. Also, died by drowning. Surely she should have died by fire.
Laura Murdoch.
Died by fire. Yeah. So there's just too much. And
It's
I think,
too much.
should I say the bit that pissed me off the most?
Yeah.
Like, so at the final act, I pretty much really enjoyed myself right up until the final act. And the final act is fun, but it just, suddenly Angelique's there and just pulled the entire town. It's like, she got a recording of Johnny admitting that he's killed a bunch of people. And then just have like this big showdown in the house. The house is getting destroyed, which elements I do like. There's effects of her like cracking like
the cracked glass effect was awesome. Yeah.
Angelique gets thrown through the ceiling into Carolyn's room, and Carolyn has turned into a werewolf. It's like,
Yeah.
"Get out of my room."
Yeah.
I quite like the design. Like,
It's
behind
alright.
and then she just come down and says, "Yeah, well, I'm a werewolf. Don't make a big thing about it." Something. And it's like, I remember being something similar. Like, where the fuck did this come from?
I'm a werewolf, okay? Let's not make a big deal of it.
Yeah, why is this in the movie?
I sent the werewolf that bit your daughters.
What difference does it make?
What difference does it make?
Yeah. Carolyn has barely been a main character in this movie anyway, so like the revelation that she's a werewolf, again, we know why they did it. There's a werewolf in the original
I think
show.
she's like
but
she's the first female werewolf in any of the Dark shows. I think she's actually the fourth person to play a werewolf now.
it was just unnecessary.
But we saw there's a deleted scene where her and Vicky are smoking in a room, which is a nice nod to their friendship in the show, but obviously in this one there's a bit of an age gap between them.
Yeah, it's
And she
well,
says
it's
something
practically
like,
non-existent.
Vicky kind of says, "Oh, I understand, you know, all girls, we go through these types of things." She's like, "No, you're not going through the things I'm going through." It's
Yeah.
like, why was this cut from the movie?
Yeah.
that makes so much sense when...
Would have been a nice little...
yeah, and it's only like a
yeah.
minute-long scene. I honestly do not know why they cut it.
All the deleted scenes, to be fair, were pretty...
There was all like
were
just
pretty good.
conversations that were cut.
I forgot another thread as well. Obviously, Julia and Barnabas together
see,
too.
There's so... Like, she wants to... When she finds out what he is, because she hypnotizes him and finds out everything,
Yeah.
she wants to turn herself into a vampire so she can be beautiful.
Yeah, she's scared of getting older.
So
she pretends to give him transfusions because he desperately wants to become human again. Whereas actually she's taking his blood and she's transfusing his blood into her body.
When he
Kinda works.
drains her, I really like how they did that.
Yeah.
Because she's got the IV in, and he talks about how much blood's in the human body and how quickly he can drink it, and how he thinks he can beat his record drinking her. See it by her neck, and then you see the IV bag full of blood just go...
Yeah.
There's so many moments in this film that are like, this is really, really good. It was just a bit more focused.
Yeah.
There's even there's a party as well. He wants to do a ball. And he listens to Carolyn because, you need Alice Cooper. Which I do quite like.
Yeah.
And they de-age him really well with makeup in that. I mean,
Yeah.
Alice Cooper's always looked like an old man anyway.
They do, yeah.
And he's like, ugliest woman... Something like that.
Alive. Who? The Cooper woman.
Go watch the Cooper woman.
What doesn't he say as well? Like, I think I knew an Alice Cooper.
Yeah, that's because Alice Cooper took his name from someone who was tried as a witch.
So, yeah.
So,
there you go.
again, I really liked, and I love Alice Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, who did Alice Cooper is just cool.
Yeah.
But, probably, for fans of the show, this is probably the most important thing, and I definitely got the most out of it this time. The cameos from the original cast.
Yeah.
So, and they're just credited as guests, and there's 4 of them come through the door.
Yeah.
And I think you can see them in backgrounds of other ones, but there's one
Yeah.
main shot, and there's Jonathan Frid,
Yeah.
who obviously played Barnabas. There's
Yeah.
Catherine Lee Scott, who played Maggie and Josette.
Yeah.
There's I haven't met the other 2 yet,
Yeah.
so it's Angelica. So who played Angelica?
Laura Parker.
Yeah, and what was the other character?
Quentin Collins, who you've also not met yet.
Yeah.
Who's played by David Selby,
Yeah,
who's another very beloved character on the show.
yeah, tissues flying everywhere.
Honestly, we're finding them for days.
The whole UK is just sick at the moment.
I know.
When are we not?
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
We'd like to shout out our groovy members. We appreciate everything you do for this channel and helping us grow. You guys are awesome. Apparently, this, especially for Johnny, was really, really important. You said from the book that when the original cast would see interviews and he'd talk about the importance of those characters and stuff like that, and how he didn't just want to they said that they could see that this was loved. And I imagine this is something that Johnny fought for to get them in it.
On board.
It's like whenever you type in this film, the first it always comes up with Johnny Depp, Michelle Pfeiffer, and then Jonathan Frid as guest number 4.
Guessed him before, yeah.
So he died before the film came out, didn't he?
He did, unfortunately, yeah.
I mean, he was what, 92?
87,
87.
I think.
Got completely off there. But he lived in Canada. You told me this great little bit of trivia that one of the producers went over to Canada and escorted him over to the UK because they were worried about this elderly man travelling on his own. Basically,
yeah. So tell a quick little story about this. So they wanted as many of the original cast as they could to come over and make a little cameo. So they settled on these 1, 2, 4 on the 4 of them. And Jonathan, he was the eldest cast member, and he was game, but he was understandably very nervous about making this 10-hour journey from Toronto to the UK and then arriving at Pinewood and then having another really long car journey to the hotel. So Jim Pearson, who was a consultant for Dan Curtis Productions and was also heavily involved with the movie, said, right, well, I will go and personally escort him and I will travel with him so he won't be on his own. So that kind of sweetened the deal. But there was another bit of a fright that they had as well, because Laura Parker, Angelique, her passport had expired. Long ago it expired, so she had to apply for an emergency passport so she could fly over to the UK. So there was bit of a mad scramble, I think, to get them all together.
Yeah.
But they were all really game, and I think Catherine Lee Scott says that when we arrived, Burton and Depp were just lovely. They were clearly very happy that we were all there.
Didn't say they would treat like royalty.
Yeah. So it was, and their little cameo was obviously very special. When I watched this back in 2012, I would have not
I know.
wouldn't have even registered.
No, wouldn't have even registered at all. And what was it that Jonathan said to Johnny?
Oh yeah, so Johnny, when he met them, he was in full Barnabas regalia, like makeup and everything was done. So he goes to greet them and says hello. And the very first thing Jonathan Frid says to him, he kind of looks at Johnny up and down, and he's like, "At least you got the hair right."
It's like, it's a bit spikier.
There's a few more spikes. And then Johnny apparently, like, very, very sheepishly was just like, "We're doing things a little bit differently."
Imagine what that moment must have been like for Johnny.
I know.
Yeah, to basically meet one of his heroes.
Yeah, I know.
But again, like, no matter what the final outcome of the film, it just shows that they were respecting the material
Totally.
enough to really, really want as many of those cast members in as possible, and to, respect them.
Yeah, it is. It's born. This whole film is born out of total respect, and like that's what I was saying earlier. In that, yes, they've introduced so many different things from the show, which on paper is great, but actually, it kind of works against the movie because there's too many sort of threads that never really. It's not so much that they don't really coalesce. It's just like they don't really end in any kind of satisfying way. I mean, the scenes themselves are interesting. Like the whole Julia and Barnabas stuff, I do really enjoy that. I mean, it's Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp, so it's, like, I'm always going to be interested to see what they do on screen. But one thing I do really like about that moment is especially when he realizes what she's been doing and he sort of turns on her, and you can see like how dangerous Barnabas actually is. Yeah. Because even in the show, Barnabas has a nasty streak to him.
Barnabas is dangerous.
Barnabas is very dangerous. We've just had a whole storyline where he's kidnapped Maggie.
Yeah.
And has been very violent with Maggie. So Barnabas does he's a reluctant vampire, but you don't want to cross him.
Yeah.
So, I like how that it was explored a little bit in the movie too.
Also something to consider is what was the target audience of this movie? Fans of the show would be probably fairly old.
Yeah.
They'd be like, well, our parents' age.
Yeah.
So obviously the aim must be to bring in new audiences. And I know a lot of people that do enjoy this film, but it also didn't do... I think at the time it was like it underperformed for a Tim Burton film. Yeah. A lot of people went down to they're getting bored of Johnny Depp and Tim Burton together. Also, people would say it looked like Tim Burton had directed from a arm's length. I personally don't think that he did. But it's also like, so if you're looking to bring in new audiences, you need to just have a focused storyline.
You do.
Maybe save all the other threads for sequels. Although Tim Burton said he never made it with sequels in mind. Like, there's a post-credit scene, but he said that was never meant to set up sequels. It was meant to represent how in a sitcom again, in a soap opera, the story never ends. As soon as something ends, something else has to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So he never intended to do sequels. But I think it could have benefited from having sequels if that first film had just been more focused.
I agree. I completely agree. Because, I mean, again, like the whole Barnabas falls in love with Vicky, Vicky falls in love with Barnabas storyline. I
forget that even happened in this.
Well, this is it.
Why is Josette in this movie?
in the movie, it's kind of set up that Vicky's going to be our main character. Because, again, she arrives at the house in the movie just like she does it in the show. So it's always like, right, we're going to see it from her point of view. But very quickly she gets sidelined because, again, Angelique is a much more interesting character.
Yeah.
And then it kind of becomes a little bit more about Barnabas and Angelique. But there's a whole section in the middle of the film where Vicky is just not there.
Yeah.
So that whole scene where they're out on the balcony and he confesses that he loves her and then she says, "Oh, I love you, but I'm scared to fall in love." It's like, well, where did that come from?
Yeah.
You guys have not had any scenes together. And then she's not in the finale. Like where the house is being torn down and Angelique's going ape shit.
She's off walking towards the edge, isn't she?
Yeah.
Because of the same thing that happened to Josette. I suppose that's the only reason that Josette could be in this. I do like Angelique's defeat. The way, like I said, the way she's chipping away because she pulls her own heart out, doesn't she? Tries to give it to him.
So this is like classic Angelique. She's her own worst enemy. So yeah, she absolutely adores Barnabas. Like the reason that she cursed him to begin with is because he spurred her. He said, "I'm not in love with you, I'm in love with this other woman," and she could not deal with that. And even centuries later, she still wants this man desperately. And so when she is actually defeated, and they kind of have like weirdly like sweet moment together, and she pulls out her heart and she says, "Take it, it's yours." And doesn't he say to her? He says something like, "You can't love, and that is your curse." It's like obsession and possession are they're very different things to
Yeah.
actually falling in love with someone. So I love that. I actually do. And Eva Green's performance as Angelique, it's like, I believe that this is a woman scorned.
She's fantastic in this. And that's the thing, like, this film has a stellar cast.
Yeah.
An absolutely stellar cast. And I will watch it, like, it's every couple of years I put this movie on. And I always have enjoyment out of it.
I will say, watching it this time, I had a lot more fun with it. And I think that is largely just because my knowledge of the TV show is much more profound. Well, it was non-existent, you know, the very first time I watched it.
But saying that, you shouldn't have to... It's like what we said with The Howling 2, where after we watched a 50-minute interview of the director, we suddenly enjoyed bits of the film a bit more. But you shouldn't have to. We also shouldn't have to watch X amount of episodes of a soap opera in order to appreciate the finer things of this movie. It should be able to stand on its own. And ultimately, I don't think it does.
No.
As far as being like, oh, this film's just okay, it can be a bit of fun. That's about the extent that this film is for me.
Basically. I'm actually very happy that the film exists, because I always appreciate when a director or, you know, filmmakers come together and they think, right, we were in love with this thing when we were younger and we want to bring it to a new audience. Like, you got to admire the logic behind that. You know, it's done out of reverence and love more than anything. Do they quite pull it off in bits, maybe? In the larger concept, no.
Yeah.
They just tried to do a little bit too much.
I know there's been previous movies, but is Dark Shadows just best suited for television?
Yeah.
Or even streaming?
Yeah.
It's a longer format thing. And I'm also happy that it exists. I'm glad that we now own it. It's part of the collection.
Yeah.
Now. It's always when it's on Netflix, especially if I'm like doing something and I just want something on. If I see Dark Shadows on, that's when I'll put it on.
Yeah.
That kind of speaks volumes anyway. It was a background movie to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's weird that's like, thinking about it, we've never really had like a perfect iteration of Dark Shadows, because like even the original at this point, there's been storylines where we've been exasperated over. We've thought they've gone on maybe a little bit too long, storylines that go nowhere.
Yeah, obviously the 90s, well, the revival was dead on arrival. The CW pilot obviously never made it past the pilot.
And
It's like the show itself is almost cursed.
Yeah.
But it's like, who else is still around who really wants to push it? Do Warner Brothers still own the rights to it? Do they want to do anything? Well, I've not seen
Yeah, we don't
anything.
know.
But we've had longer gaps. Like, what the longest gap would have been 1971 through to like the 90s.
Yeah.
Where there was just, I think there was books and comics, but there was no
screen adaptation.
no screen adaptation. We've had longer gaps than this.
Yeah.
And I do believe it will come back at some point, but in what form?
We don't know.
We don't know.
I would welcome it.
Yeah.
I'm always eager to see anything to do with Dark Shadows.
Maybe they have to change the setting again. Maybe they change the time period.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Have you got any more notes on this one?
No, I don't actually. As I say, I enjoyed rewatching it again. It's still by no means a perfect movie, but I have a newfound appreciation for it.
Thanks a lot, guys, for our second installment of Dark Shadows videos. I think we initially planned on doing one just on Barnabas on his first story arc.
Yeah.
But I think after making that first video, I just had a hankering to watch this movie.
Yeah.
So we did. So the next Dark Shadows one will be on Barnabas's first story arc, which will be I believe we've just kind of brought to a close.
Yeah.
And his whole the effect on the show he had and the fan base.
Yes.
Which I think
The show was never the same again.
Yeah, I mean you can tell what the reaction was, considering he is the main character of this movie. Even in the show at this point, Barnabas is not the main character.
No, he's not.
No, but he is the lead of this movie.
Yeah.
Is his story. Even if the movie sometimes forgets that as well.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have you seen this one? What do you think about, like, where do you rate it in Tim Burton's filmography?
Yeah.
He's done some pretty darn good films through the years. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next week.